Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are in the world. It's yours truly, Brand O. Welcome back. Welcome back to the College Football Kickoff Show 10Q series. It's been a while. And just to give you an idea of how things are going with yours truly, we're getting ready for commencement of W&J College, which will be a week from this Saturday. So right now I'm taking a week's vacation from the college to do some college football kickoff show related business. After all, if I go another day without doing something for the show, I'm going to have to fire myself. So here we are, folks. We are back in business. How you doing? And before we dive into the question for this week, I already went over. Well, I kind of, sort of went over the first part of this, being that we're getting ready for commencement. But there's something else that I'm going to be doing later on this week, and that is taking a trip to Cameron Stadium to see how things are going down there in the cleanup efforts, which, for those of you who haven't heard, Cameron Stadium got two big floodings about a week apart from each other that flooded the track so much so that parts of the track came up from out of the ground. The Hall of Fame, which sits next to the stadium, also got flooded. Water everywhere. Debris everywhere. And I've seen two other floods before this, and this, I have to say, is the worst one that I have ever feasted my eyes on. So, at this stage in the ball game right now, efforts to get things ready for the fall are currently ongoing. The football team just had their final practices, and they did them at my old stomping ground at Wash Ice Stadium, and I actually got to attend one of those practices a couple weeks ago. So that was a lot of fun. So Cameron Stadium will be on the docket later on in the week, and something else to talk about really quick here. And this is good news for me because now I can start to dive in to getting things ready for when we get down to the business of picking games this fall on the College Football Kickoff Show. The CBS Sports app has finally updated the score feature on its app for NCAA football. All the scores and bowl game results from last year have been cleared and off the board. And now I get the dubious distinction of typing everything into the iPod Touch. 1 week, one game at a time. Just to give me an excuse to study and prepare for all the picks that have to be made this season. And just to be clear on something, some of the games do have kickoff times already set, but a very large chunk. If I could do it based on percentages, I'm thinking maybe 90 to 95% of the season's regular season games do not have a designated kickoff time yet. And I think it's also safe to assume that after the first few weeks of the season, there's going to be a lot of flexing going on, which makes the perfect sense because, after all, the networks want the biggest games to be on their networks, and quite frankly, we do too. So now I get to start to prepare in earnest, all while wrapping up the 10Q series and whatever else that I'm involved in with the college football kickoff show. Oh yeah, one more thing before we dive into the question for this edition of 10Qs. Not only are we over 100 days away from the official start of the college football season, we are roughly 2 months away from the release of the College Football 25 video game. And it's to my understanding that as of last week, Chris Fowler and Kirk Herbstreit have wrapped up their contributions to the video game. And I believe from what Chris had mentioned on his Instagram page, somewhere in the neighborhood of about, I hope I'm not exaggerating, 2 years, 119 hours, over 700 names, and not one of them's mine. I'm kidding, folks. I'm kidding. If you think that's bad, Oklahoma's got a quarterback named General Booty who just went into the transfer portal, which sounds very, very wrong on so many levels. Anyway, there's going to be a full reveal later on in the month. And sometime after that reveal is done, there will be a copy of Lindy's coming my way. The college football preview issue that I'm an avid reader from, as I'm sure a lot of you know. And then the fun begins after that. Cannot wait for it. Cannot wait for it. So we got a lot going on. Some I'm in control of, some I'm not. But there is one thing that we have to take care of business on, and that's why we're here. To give you this 7th installment of 10Qs, and props once again to the College Football Commission for coming through in the clutch. They submitted 3 more good ones to wrap up the show with. So, or the series for that matter. The first of the 3 is a very interesting one. Is there a rivalry bucket list game that I could attend to? Well, the answer has already been done, and that was long before the term bucket list became part of our lexicon. Pitt in West Virginia, 1989, if I remember correctly. 88, 89. 89. And the story's been told quite a few times already, but that's the short answer. I've already done it. Therefore, there's no more bucket list. There's no list. There's no bucket. But then I got to thinking, there is no wrong answer to this, because there's a lot of games, a lot of rivalry games. But I tell you, you name them, chances are I wouldn't mind being there for them. There probably are some exceptions. It would be easy for me to probably tell you which ones I wouldn't want to see. But if there's one that's close by that doesn't involve Pitt, it's probably Michigan and Ohio State. But that's a tough ticket anyway. It really is. You're either a Michigan fan or an Ohio State fan. There is no in between, which leaves me out. And I say that in part because now that Jim Harbaugh is gone from Michigan, I can actually start liking Michigan again, but not to the level of an Oregon or an Alabama or in Ohio State for that matter. Heck, I've rooted for Ohio State the last 2 or 3 times they played Michigan. I mean, I would almost consider that as the top of that list, but there are others. I mean, Alabama and Auburn, that's probably the one game where I would almost have to, how should I put this? Become a citizen of the state of Alabama. And if part of the criteria is to name my alliance, I would have to start singing Deacon Blues, the Steely Dan song. They call Alabama the Crimson Tide. Call me Deacon Blues, Deacon Blues. Sorry, I just had to channel my inner Donald Fagen. Anyway. I would root for Alabama. And that's a resounding 110% certainty. You will never, ever catch me rooting for Auburn to beat Alabama. Even if I've watched that kick six play from 10 years ago over and over and over again. It's one of the greatest plays in the history of college football. I mean, there's no denying that. It was a huge game. Alabama was number one in the country. And you guys saw it, you know. So, let's see. I mean, there's Alabama and Auburn. There's Michigan and Ohio State. I will tell you. That at the risk of making this sound like it's MMA or the UFC, if there is a game that I want a ringside seat for, Texas and Texas A&M. Never will you find two more schools so full of themselves in thinking that they're better and bigger than everybody else. Well, it's because everything's bigger than in Texas. The thing that got me about Texas A&M when they left for the SEC was that they didn't want to play Texas anymore. They thought they were better than Texas. And there were some instances where they played well enough that, you know, it had some merit. I mean, Texas was trying to find its footing. There were, you know, coaching changes. You know, Mac Brown had left to go back to North Carolina. Actually, he retired for a short time only to go back to North Carolina. Texas A&M, of course, had Johnny Manslaughter at quarterback, and I was not down with him or the Aggies. Haven't been down with them since. So, if there is a rooting interest, in fact, I'll go ahead and make it official right now, that regardless of ranking and record, I'm taking Texas over Texas A&M, and I believe that's Thanksgiving weekend, which really and rightfully it should always be. Texas and Texas A&M. And there were some classics. Each of them have won their lion's share of games over the years. I mean, who could forget Ricky Williams breaking the career rushing record on that long touchdown run down in Austin in the mud. So I'm happy. I'm happy that Texas is in the SEC just for that reason. It's basically telling the folks in College Station, company's coming. Thanksgiving weekend is rightfully back to where it should always be, where turkeys won't be the only thing getting stuffed. Believe me, I am looking forward to that bloodbath. And I'm owning up to this. I am. There are times, most of the time this year, I'm probably going to be rooting against Texas. Because number one, I think they're overrated. Number two, I'm not a Steve Sarkisian fan. And that's only because he was a quarterback at BYU, which means I'm not crazy about BYU either. That was until the Key and Peele sketch where their most famous fictitious alum, the immortal Dan Smith, was enshrined for all eternity in a single sketch. BYU, YUB. Oh man, but anyway, that's basically the short list. There's no buckets, but there is a list. I mean, those three right off the. I suppose Oregon and Washington would get name checked in there too. And it would have to be at Autzen Stadium. I would feel safe there. Certainly, my voice would get drowned out by the loud, vociferous Autzen Stadium faithful. And if there are other rivalries out there, and there are, too many to mention for this. So, I mean, Pitt and West Virginia was great for what it was and what it is and what should continue to be. As for the other rivalries, you know what? How could I forget Army-Navy? How could I forget Army-Navy? Really, it's the one rivalry where I think you have to be there to appreciate the pomp and circumstance and the camaraderie of it all for all the right reasons. And it's one of those games, and I said this before in talking about the greatest rivalry in college football. And that is one, I think, where even if you're a casual fan and you have some understanding of the rivalry, you just want for both teams to do well. But if you're one of those that truly and fully understand what that rivalry means to the service academies, it goes a hell of a lot deeper than that. And the only other thing I can say is if you're really not at all convinced of it, watch an Army-Navy game and you'll know why. So, talk about coming through in the clutch. So you got an assortment of rivalries that I wouldn't mind being at if money was no object. But happy to say I don't have the bucket and the list to go with it. So much like a lot of you that are watching this, it's always great to watch it in front of the television and appreciate them for what they are, for their history, for the great games, the great coaches, the great players, all of it, and so much more. And with that, we are going to close the book on this one since we're coming up on the 20-minute mark. That has been your most recent edition of the College Football Kickoff Show 10Qs series. Number 7 now officially in the books. The next time we'll be doing this will be after the W&J commencement. And just so you know, we do have other questions lined up, and they will be revealed and answered when the time comes. For now, yours truly, Brando, signing off for the College Football Kickoff Show 10Q series. And oh, by the way, 10Q.